Hello and welcome to this tutorial, and in this tutorial we'll be finally finishing the camera game which we have just started in the previous tutorial. So as you could see right now we have an error, and that is because we have these overrides here, so make sure that you delete it. And as discussed in the previous tutorial, we are only going to work with this pan right here. So whenever the user pans onto the screen, he will be able to notice eventual changes. So the next thing which we need to do is that we need to create certain objects inside the main class. So the next thing which we do is that we go here and we initialize a few objects. So the first object is going to be the camera object, and the camera object which we are going to use, or the class which we are going to use, is going to be the orthographic camera. So we type private, then we type orthographic camera, and let's name the object as camera. So orthographic camera is a camera which is used for like 2D purposes, and as in this case we are going to develop 2D games, so we are going to use the orthographic camera. Next thing which we need to do is that we need to use textures. So we type private texture, let's name it as texture, and after texture one more thing which we need is going to be the sprite. So we type private sprite and let's name it as sprite. So once we have these objects, we go inside the onCreate, and here we write the code which we want to execute. So inside the create, we usually just initialize the object. So let's go ahead and do that. So we have three objects: the camera, texture, and sprite. So let's go ahead and initialize three of them. So the first thing which we need to do is we need to initialize the camera. So we type camera equals new orthographic camera, and inside it we specify a few parameters. So the first parameter is going to be the width, and the second parameter is going to be the height. Now as in this case we don't know the width and the height, we are going to extract the width and the height from the gdx.graphics. So we type gdx.graphics.getWidth, and then we are going to type in gdx dot sorry that is gdx dot graphics dot get width. This should be actually get height. Okay, so once we have passed in the height and the width, the next thing which we need to do is that we need to initialize the texture object. So in order to initialize the texture object, we type texture equals new texture, and inside it we need to pass in the path of the file. So basically the file which we have is going to be the map.png. So inside it we pass in gdx dot files, as we need to pass in a file, dot internal, and then we need to specify the name of our image. So in this case we are going to type map.png, and finally we initialize the sprite object. We type sprite equals new sprite, and to this we pass in the texture object which we have just created. So we type in texture, and finally we are going to set the position of the sprite. So we type sprite dot set position, and we need to place it in the center. So in order to place it in the center, we type minus sprite dot get width, and basically we are going to pass in the center coordinates. So in order to get the center coordinates, we are going to type in this divided by 2, which is going to give us the x central coordinate, and the next thing which we type in is minus sprite dot get height divided by 2, and this is basically going to give us the y central coordinate. So once we pass the central coordinate position for both x and y, we are pretty much done. And the next thing which we need to do is that we need to set up the input processor. So in order to do that, we type gdx dot input dot set input processor, and set input processor is basically used in order to manipulate or in order to gauge the user input. So we type new gesture detector, and to this we pass in this, as we are working with the current object. So now we are done with the code inside the create. Now the next thing which we need to do is that we need to dispose of the resources which we have used. So the first resource we are going to dispose of is going to be the texture. So we type texture dot dispose, and it is eventually going to dispose the texture when we are done using it. Now once this is done, the only thing which we need to do is that we need to go into this render, and right before begin we actually need to set the projection. So in order to set the projection, we type in batch dot set projection matrix, and to this we pass camera dot combined, and this is basically used in order to set the projection of the camera. So once everything is done, we finally need to add the code to the begin. So we go inside the begin, and the only line of code which we are going to add is going to be sprite.draw. So we type sprite.draw, and to this we are going to pass the batch as we did in each and every libgdx tutorial. So once we are done with this, we are done with the main code, and the final thing which we need to do is that we need to add some line of codes to the pan method so as to get the user input and manipulate it. So we type camera dot translate, and it is basically going to change the camera positions, and to this we are going to pass in minus delta x comma delta y. So these are the basic coordinate positions which we have right here, and we just pass them in inside this. And the final thing which we need to do, as once we have the coordinates, we want to update the camera according to these coordinates. So we type camera dot update. So once this is done, we are done with the code. So in order to check our output, we save the code and we execute this on our device, and as you could see, this is what right now I'm able to see on my device, and I could pan through the entire image. And the thing is that we need to choose an appropriate size image. That is because if we pan too much, we are going to get out of the image. So as you could see, I could basically go through each and every screen, and that's it. So that's it for this tutorial, and I hope you guys understood how to handle the user input in libgdx and how to use pan in order to pan through the image which we have in our game. So thank you very much for watching this tutorial, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Thank you.